a man had a very specific request for an OnlyFans model.
Asking her to buy boots and glue them on his feet with Gorilla Glue. He was asking her to buy dildos and glue them in his mouth. And he also asked her to pour pools of Gorilla Glue into his eyes to glue them shut so that she was the last girl that he would ever see.
Then he died after the fatal fetish encounter.
Essentially, there was a lack of oxygen to the brain because of the plastic wrapping around the head, leading to fatal injury.
Now the OnlyFans model is charged with his murder. Was it a horrible accident or a cold, calculated killing?
I could just hear him say, can we stop? I'll pay you a certain amount more money to stop. And that's when I realized that it wasn't a friend, it was a prostitute.
Thanks for joining us on Law and Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner. We brought you this story just a few months back. A mom of three who doubles as a spicy content creator or OnlyFans model is accused of placing a plastic bag over her client's head in what was supposed to be a kinky fetish encounter. But police say even when he wasn't moving, the model kept on recording.
Can you describe for us what we see here?
Same thing, Michaela's sitting there topless, masturbating with a vibrator, lip syncing to the music. It pans down to Mr. Dale laying at her feet, motionless, still wrapped up the same exact way. Looked like she might have been resting her foot on him.
You mentioned in the previous clip how there was one moment where Mr. Dale's body kind of moves or shifts. Any movement with Mr. Dale in this clip?
No.
In April of 2023, more than 2 years ago, 56-year-old Michael Dale was rushed to the hospital. He was found in a really unusual and kind of scary state. Investigators say he had duct tape over his mouth, a plastic bag over his head. His head was also wrapped in saran wrap and covered in duct tape. An unusual scene, right? So it might have come as a surprise to investigators that he reportedly made the request and paid a 29-year-old OnlyFans model $11,000 to do that to him. Initially, it was reported that Michael Dale spotted Michaela Rylaarsdam on a website for hiring spicy dancers and escorts. And it was reportedly Michaela's first time ever engaging in this type of fetish behavior with a client. So police say Michael and Michaela met up on April 17th, but even before that, they were texting one another for weeks. And nothing wrong with engaging in what you want to engage in with two consenting adults, right? But then a 911 call came in on the evening of April 17th. When officers responded to Michael's home, they say he was lying on his back and Michaela was giving him CPR.
He didn't have a shirt on. His arms were above his head, bound like this. It appeared to be like some sort of tape and rope around his wrists. He was wearing red pants and had both of his legs bound together by a clear plastic wrap. And he was also wearing some black boots.
Could you walk us through sort of your mindset as you're rendering CPR on the male laying down?
Obviously, I'm trying to give effective CPR, but my thought process is wanting to get that person out of the room. She seemed kind of frantic.
You're talking about the defendant?
Yes, sir.
And why is it important in your mind to get her out of the room?
For me, it's more of just an officer safety standpoint. I'm not sure what the true nature of what I'm walking into is, so I'd prefer for me to just be there alone.
So, towards the end of the video, we see other personnel arrive. Were those paramedics?
Yes, sir.
Did they take over with the rendering of CPR?
They did.
After that, did you stick around on scene?
Yes, sir.
And were you tasked with doing anything else on scene?
Yes. Ultimately, what I did was remain in the room and assist with evidence collection.
Can you tell us about what sort of evidence you collected there from the bedroom?
Sure. We had like I believe there were like bundles of what appeared to be used tape, yellow rope. There was about 7 boxes of clear plastic wrap, rolls of clear plastic wrap. I collected 3 bottles of Gorilla Glue, believe we also impounded the black boots and a clear, like, medium-sized bag with red lipstick on it.
You mentioned black boots.
Yes, sir.
What black boots?
My partner who assisted at the hospital collected the black boots that were on Mr. Dale's feet.
Can you describe the boots that were on Mr. Dale's feet?
Yeah, they were like these thick leather, kind of shiny black boots.
Do you remember seeing those boots on him when you walked into the room that night?
Yes, sir.
Gorilla Glue, plastic wrap, duct tape really does sound like a horror scene. But according to Michaela's attorneys, they argue she tried to help the victim.
She was wearing lingerie, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you didn't see any weapon on her,
I
correct?
did not, sir.
It was more just kind of to control the situation. It's easier if she's not there. You don't have to deal with her. You don't have to have your attention divided, correct?
That's correct, sir.
And so you asked her to step outside.
I did.
She stepped outside.
She ultimately, yes, sir.
And she stayed outside until other units arrived, correct?
That's correct, sir.
She didn't flee.
No, sir.
She didn't try and leave, correct?
No, sir.
And it's your understanding that she did speak with other officers about what happened, correct?
Yes, sir.
So like I mentioned, this encounter happened back in April of 2023. However, Michaela wasn't arrested and charged until this year in 2025. The charge came after the medical examiner ruled Michael's death as a homicide.
Is it fair to say that if Mr. Dale had not consumed any alcohol from the time that he went in, that he became unresponsive, to the time that he went to the hospital, that his alcohol level may have been higher at the time that the incident happened?
Sure,
It might have been higher than a .33.
absolutely.
And typically for most people, .40 is considered to be a near fatal or fatal level of alcohol, correct?
Yes, that's a correct guideline.
Now, alcohol is a depressant, correct?
Yes,
And that's what suppresses the fact that you're breathing, correct? Is the depressant acts.
yes,
He also had trazodone in his system, correct?
yes,
He had, was it .13 nanograms of trazodone?
I think it was 0.17 milligrams per liter.
0.17 milligrams per liter. Now, that's a therapeutic level, correct?
I think it's actually subtherapeutic, but yeah, within that range, for sure.
But it's a depressant as well, correct?
Yes. Mhm.
And that can have a reaction with alcohol, enhancing alcohol's effects, correct?
Yes,
So the two together could cause a person's respiratory to be to be suppressed, correct?
it could have a synergistic effect, yes.
Now, I just got to say here that you can really see the arguments for both sides. The prosecution claims that this was a murder. However, the defense argues this was a terrible accident. Even though this isn't a trial, a jury will eventually have a lot to consider, like the text messages between Michaela and the victim.
What was the nature of the messages back and forth?
The nature of it was Mr. Dale asking Ms. Rylaarsdam to do certain things for him. He was asking her to buy boots and glue them on his feet with Gorilla Glue. He was asking her to buy dildos and glue them in his mouth. And he also asked her to pour pools of Gorilla Glue into his eyes to glue them shut, so that she was the last girl that he would ever see.
And based on these text messages, were you able to tell whether Mr. Dale was offering money in exchange for these acts?
Yes, I believe he was going to offer some money. I don't remember how much at this time.
We see on the top left-hand corner, Michael Dale, and then next to that, it says the Queen. Based on your investigation, who is the Queen?
Michaela Rylaarsdam.
Okay. And then to the right of the Queen, we see a timestamp. Is that fair?
Correct.
And then to the right of that, does it tell us whether it's an incoming or outgoing text?
Yes.
All right. So this first text, is this an incoming text?
Yes.
Can you go ahead and read the body of the text for us?
The body says, "So what color boots are you going to get? Black, red, pink for me. How about the bright pink?"
And is this a text from Michael Dale to the defendant, Ms. Rylaarsdam?
Yes.
All right. There's mention of boots How do the boots fit in to this? You have to go back here?
No, yeah.
Okay.
Unless, I mean, if you need to point things out, great, otherwise, I don't think you need to be up here.
Thank you. So there's a mention of boots in this very first text. Can you tell us, based on your investigation of the case, what's the significance, if any, of the boots?
So Mr. Dale was asking Ms. Rylaarsdam to buy a pair of boots and glue them onto his feet. And when Mr. Dale was found, he did have a pair of boots glued onto his feet. They had to be removed in the emergency room.
Were those the same boots that Officer Edwards was describing?
Those are the same boots that he saw on him. And I believe there was a second pair that were in the room on the floor.
So one pair glued onto Mr. Dale's feet, second pair of unused boots on the floor, is that fair?
I believe so.
Okay. So the very next text message in the middle, what are we looking at here?
It's a photo of some dildos.
And again, is this an outgoing text from Michael Dale to the defendant, Ms. Rylaarsdam?
This is an incoming text from Michael Dale. This is from Ms. Rylaarsdam's phone. So it's an incoming text from Michael Dale to Ms. Rylaarsdam.
Thank you. And you said it's a picture of dildos?
Yeah, it's a advertisement on Etsy for to buy dildos for $36.
Can you read the next text message for us at the very bottom of page 1?
It's also incoming from Mr. Dale, and it says, "I was thinking of something like this, say 6 inches long, that you could put down my throat before you glue my mouth shut."
Before we flip to page 2, can you tell us what is the timestamp or time frame of these text messages?
The picture came in at 7:05 p.m. on 3/26/23, and the text message came in at 7:06 p.m. So one right after the other.
So fair to say a couple weeks before the incident?
Correct.
All right. Let's flip to page 2 on equals 3. For the record, timestamp of these first couple messages are March 27th of 2023. Is that accurate, sir?
Yes.
All right. Walk us through the first 3 texts that we see on the second page. Can you go ahead and read those and describe who's sending them and who's receiving them?
Sure. These all 3 are incoming from Michael Dale to Michaela Rylaarsdam. The first is on 3/27/23. It's at 9:32 a.m. The body of the text reads, "Yes, I have been seriously thinking about you gluing my eyes shut at the end."
Okay. How about the next text?
The next text is the same day at 11:57 a.m., which says, "Can we glue my eyes shut, please? So sexy, you being the last beautiful angel I ever see."
And how about the next text?
The next text is at 12 p.m., so 3 minutes later, and it states, "So can we please glue my eyes shut at the end, seriously?"
And that's also from Mr. Dale to the defendant?
Correct.
All right. So we see 5 total texts on this page. We've gone through 3 of them. Can you go ahead and read for us the next or 4th text message?
The next text message is an outgoing message from Michaela to Michael Dale at 12:01 p.m., which says yes.
All right. How about the 5th and final text?
That's from Michael Dale to Michaela Rylaarsdam at 12:03 p.m., which says, "I seriously want a pool of glue over each eye, okay?"
If you could turn to the 3rd page of this exhibit, equals 3. 4 text messages on this 3rd page. For the record, the first text, is this incoming from Michael Dale to the defendant?
Yes.
And what's the timestamp on this one?
12:05 p.m. on 3/27, the same day.
And go ahead and read that for us.
I want to make sure that I can never, in capitals, I can never ever see another girl, okay?
How about the second text message?
The second one is from Michaela Rylaarsdam to Michael Dale, outgoing at 12:09 p.m., and it says never.
And the third?
The third is from Michael Dale to Michaela Rylaarsdam. It's at 12:11 p.m., and the text reads, "So does that mean you will truly and honestly put a pool of Gorilla Glue in each eye to make it truly permanent for me, my sexy angel?"
And the fourth text, was this the defendant's response to that?
Yes, it's an outgoing text message from Michaela Rylaarsdam to Michael Dale at 12:13 p.m. And it says, "I will do whatever we put into writing to be signed Dollface."
So those messages were reportedly sent weeks before Michael's death. Then the night came for them to act out these fantasies. The defense has argued Michaela tried to save Michael's life, but investigators presented video evidence that could upend the defense's argument.
Well, there were several videos. The videos appeared to have been taken by Michaela in selfie mode. There were videos of her dancing to some music, topless. In the background for the first couple, you could see Michael Dale. He was, at that point, his hands or his wrists had been bound, and he had black duct tape over his hands, completely covering his hands. He was wrapped in saran wrap. His thighs, from his thighs down, were wrapped in saran wrap. I remember it looked like a piece of saran wrap or plastic that was hanging around his shoulders loosely, almost like a sash. And he had black duct tape around his mouth, wrapped around his head.
In these videos, do we see anything actually covering his head or his face?
Well, the first two videos, he's got just the duct tape around it. And the subsequent videos I saw, he had several layers over his head. So,
And when you say layers, watching the videos, could you tell what layers or what objects those were?
it appeared that he still had the black duct tape around his mouth, a plastic bag over his head, and then what I believe was that a loose saran wrap was wrapped around his face as well as tied around his neck, and then there was some pink duct tape that was wrapped around his mouth all the way around his head.
The prosecution played this series of videos for the courts. However, we don't see them. But the detective described in great detail what he observed, as some of these videos were allegedly taken while the victim was already taking his final breaths.
Yes, so she put her foot up on top of him while he was laying on the floor and then sat on him while she was videoing.
Moving to clip D, was this timestamp of 9:56 p.m.?
Correct.
Now to clarify, up to this point, have we seen any sort of plastic bag or other covering over Mr. Dale's head?
No.
I want you to breathe with a bag over your head. Take your go. Like a little tighten your neck up. What do you think?
Can you describe for us what we see in clip D?
So in this video, Mr. Dale is laying on the floor. His hands are still bound and covered in black duct tape. Although this time he's got a plastic bag over his head. What looks like that loose plastic wrapped around it as well as around his neck. He has pink duct tape wrapped around his face, wrapped around his head completely, holding it all in place. This is a video that is being filmed by Michaela, pointing downwards at Mr. Dale as he speaks to him. At one point she says, maybe I should tighten your neck up, and it looks like she reaches down and kind of hooks her finger underneath the plastic around his neck and kind of tugs on it. So in this clip, Michaela's filming herself, sitting on the floor, topless, masturbating with a vibrator, and pans back and forth between herself and Mr. Dale, who's laying on the floor at her feet, still bound in the same way. Everything's all the same, with the wrappings around his face, his hands, and his legs. He lays there motionless for most of the video, and then makes one movement, and kind of his body just shifts and looks like it kind of takes in a breath and lets out a breath.
Is he laying on his back, on his side, on his front?
Looked like on his side.
Can you describe for us what we see here?
Same thing, Michaela's sitting there topless, masturbating with a vibrator, lip syncing to the music. It pans down to Mr. Dale laying at her feet, motionless, still wrapped up the same exact way. Looked like she might have been resting her foot on him.
You mentioned in the previous clip how there was one moment where Mr. Dale's body kind of moves or shifts. Any movement with Mr. Dale in this clip?
No.
According to the detective, Michael was laying on the ground with saran wrap covering his face and head for at least 8 minutes. Even at one point, Michaela and her husband were allegedly texting one another as he expressed excitement over the photos Michaela sent him. All of this reportedly happening before 911 was called. Now, Michael also has roommates. His roommate testified he'd only been living in the home less than a week before his death.
Can you describe for us how it was that you became aware of the incident?
I came in to get dessert and I heard some commotion. I put my dessert back and then was proceeding back to my room to call my sister because I was like, what's going on? I got a text from one of the roommates saying all this noise.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled, effect on listener. Next question.
So you mentioned the commotion. Could you tell from where the commotion was coming from?
Yeah, I could tell it was coming from Michael's room because there was only 3 of us home at the time. Helen, Michael, and me. All the other roommates were either at work or gone.
You also mentioned you texted your sister. How does your sister fit into this house?
My sister owns the house. She's basically the landlord.
Okay. And you texted your sister.
I called my sister, sorry.
Apologies. You
Yeah,
called your
sorry.
sister. What was sort of the purpose of the phone call to your sister?
I was calling my sister because Michael had brought home a female and stuff was going on that we don't really allow kind of in the house. We don't have overnight guests. We try to be respectful, but it sounded like, stuff was going on that shouldn't be going on in that. I mean, to each his own, but you got roommates.
Could you be more specific? What was going on? What wasn't allowed in the house?
Well, the overnights, but he brought home, I don't know how you want me to say,
Just use your own words.
prostitute, hooker, or whatever, and kind of go get a hotel for that. You move in 5 days and this is what's going on. I had gotten a text from the other roommate, which she said was all the noise was going on, and she was scared. I remember next was Helen coming out to the garage saying that.
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled, effect on listener. You can continue.
Coming out saying that the girl needed help. So I came into the house and walked towards Michael Dale's room with Helen and the girl. And that's when I saw Mr. Dale, and I said, we need to call 911. So one of the girls, I'm not too sure who dialed 911. We got the 911 operator on the phone, and we said that he wasn't breathing, so he was like, "You guys start CPR." The girls looked at me, to do it, but in my physical, I wouldn't have been able to do it. We would have had 2 ambulances coming. The girl started CPR. When I saw the situation, the CPR was started, I went to the front door and opened it up for the ambulance or police officers that were going to be coming.
Okay. You're mentioning the girl. Are you talking about Helen or the female guest?
Oh, female guest, sorry.
That same female guest that you're describing, do you also see here in the courtroom?
Yes, I do.
For the record, can you please describe where she's seated and what color shirt she's wearing?
I think it was red or pink, and it was a...
I'm sorry, today. Where is she today?
Oh, sorry. She's sitting over there. She has a gray sweatshirt on.
The witnesses identified the defendant.
Thank you.
And one of the biggest bombshells of the hearing was that Michael's roommate could allegedly hear him begging for the so-called experience to stop.
I could just hear him say, can we stop? I'll pay you a certain amount more money to stop. And that's when I realized that it wasn't a friend, it was a prostitute or whatever you want to say.
So you hear Mr. Dale say this comment. Are you in the kitchen at that point?
Basically in the kitchen.
And so after that, is that when you go back to the garage?
That's when I went back to the garage and called my sister and was trying to decide what we should do, call the police or because, like I said, Helen had texted me at that kind of same time-ish and was hearing noises and was frightened.
Where is Helen in the house when this is going on?
She was in her room, I do believe. Like I said, I wasn't in the house, so I'm not too sure, but I'm sure she was probably in her room because that would be her safest place.
So you were telling us before about how you leave the garage and you walk toward Mr. Dale's room, is
Yes.
that right? Did you actually go in and see what was going on in the room?
Yes, I went into Michael Dale's room and he was laying on the floor, not breathing, and that's when I was like, we need to call 911. And like I said, I can't remember which girl, Helen or what's her name? Michaela? I'm sorry. Michaela, I don't know which one called 911, but once we got them on and they were, given directions for CPR, Michaela started CPR.
You mentioned Mr. Dale was on the ground. Can you tell us, is he laying on his back, on his side?
He was on his back.
And that was just a snippet of the evidence prosecutors brought out in court. I'm joined now by attorney Melba Pearson. And Melba, I remember when we first chatted about this case, when the story first broke, and it seemed like, at least to me, it felt like it was an accident. Now, as we're learning more, it seems like the jury has a lot to consider. But what's your take on the new bombshells that we heard in court, like the roommate's testimony about hearing the victim say he'll pay more money if she stops?
Yeah, so Elizabeth, always great to be on with you. And it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking because again, the victim signed up for what he thought was going to be fun. But again, reminder that fantasy and reality can be two very different things. And so he obviously was begging for her to stop. But again, in the context of this being a BDSM type of encounter, it's possible that she thought that that was sort of part of the game versus he seriously and truly wanted to opt out, which again, not that I'm an expert in this arena and I'm not going to kink shame anybody, but the reality is normally that's why you have a safe word in that type of situation so that there's a distinction between, okay, this is a game and wait, no, it's time to stop. I'm being hurt in a way that is not consistent with what I signed up for.
And in terms of the law and the eyes of the law, how important is intent here? Because it seemed like from the defense's perspective, there was no intent to harm this man, the victim that he ended up being. But in terms of just intent versus what had actually ended up happening, how important is it in the eyes of the law where the jury may see, okay, well, maybe she didn't intend to do this, but then as a result, her client, alleged client, ended up dead?
So there's a couple things to unpack here. So first degree murder, which is usually the premeditation aspect, that's not on the table because it's not like she planned to harm him. Now, second degree murder, definitely on the table because of the fact that she engaged in something that would be deemed as wanton and reckless disregard for human life, that you're doing something that's so out of pocket, so out of the norm, and so likely to cause harm, and yet you proceeded to do so anyway. Now, again, the nuance, because of this fact that this is a BDSM type situation, yes, most things in that arena are going to be disregard for human life, right? Because we're looking at asphyxiation and all that type of stuff that's done consensually. So what I think truly applies here is manslaughter, because again, they engaged in something that was, there was consent involved, and they agreed to go to a certain point. She just went a bit too far. So I think manslaughter is probably the most appropriate charge here, if any, if any.
And are you surprised, given that this had happened about 2 years ago, it happened in 2023, that she was only charged now in 2025? Why do you think that there was such a discrepancy in the amount of time that's passed, but also why did the charges come about now as opposed to when the incident first occurred?
My only guess would be that it was as part of the investigation. So law enforcement was going through phone records, talking to witnesses, talking to her boyfriend, who apparently got some footage of what was happening in real time.
Husband, yeah.
So, excuse me, her husband, yes, who had gotten footage in real time and actually responded to it. So there were a number of people that they needed to speak to figure out whether or not this was truly a consensual sexual encounter that went wrong, or if there was something more nefarious at play here.
Yeah, because just hearing about all these text messages and even the video evidence that prosecutors have, it seemed like, especially with the victim making this very specific request for Michaela to kind of allegedly glue him with Gorilla Glue into his boots, even put it into his eyes, so that way she would be the last person he saw, and even the whole saran wrap aspect to it. I feel like there's just so many different layers to this case. But even with all these different layers, are you surprised that the judge said no bond for this defendant, given that, it's still kind of up in the air in terms of which murder count it'll be, whether it'll be manslaughter or first degree or second degree murder? But are you surprised she's being held without bond, especially because even though she is a spicy content creator, she is still a mom of three, she still has a husband at home? But are you surprised the judge said no for bond?
I am surprised because judges usually have to consider whether or not someone is a flight risk, whether or not they're a danger to the community, and whether or not they're going to reoffend during the time that they're out on bond pending trial. And I don't see any of those indicators there. She does not have a prior criminal history to the best of our knowledge. She is settled in terms of she has a husband and a family. So, she's pretty stable in terms of where she is. She's pretty easy to find because she's on social. So it's not like she can disappear somewhere and no one's going to know where she is or be able to find her. And she seemed to have roots in the community. So to me, that's a little surprising. And again, looking at the facts, it's not that she planned it. It's not that, she did something horrible and violent from the standpoint of this was not consensual. She just went up to this guy and decided to put Gorilla Glue in his eyes or something along those lines, right? So not saying that this isn't terrible. Let's be very clear about that. But in terms of the consent aspect, that changes the dynamics of what we're dealing with. So that's why I'm a bit surprised that the judge is holding her no bond. I would have thought that they would have set a bond. Maybe it would have been a bit high, but I still thought that a bond would have been appropriate, again, because I don't think she's a flight risk, and she cooperated with law enforcement right out the gate. She remained available to them to answer questions. And so she wasn't giving the hallmarks of somebody who would flee, like AKA the Adelsons.
The shameless plug right there, all that. I love it. And I was going to ask you, Melba, in terms of her staying on the scene, to your point, and giving the victim CPR, because, even though we didn't see the body cam video during that hearing, we did hear it, but it seemed like she was kind of frantic in a sense of what had happened. And, at the time, I think she was like 29 years old, but still unfamiliar kind of with this territory. Maybe she was only posting videos at that time. But in terms of her staying on scene, in terms of her helping kind of render aid to the victim, while, the prosecution also kind of argues that she kept on recording even though he was unresponsive. In terms of where you see this going in the future, if you had a crystal ball, what side do you see the jury kind of leaning towards, given that it really could, and it really does feel like you could see both sides going both ways? You don't really know what the outcome of this case could be.
So my crystal ball says mistrial. And hung jury, because I think there's going to be folks that are going to hold out and be like, listen, this is what the guy signed up for. He didn't plan on dying, but he signed up for all of these other things, and he assumed the risk. He knew that, because again, a logical human being, that if someone puts a bag over your head and you're not able to breathe, there's a distinct possibility that you may expire. And so I could see a juror being like, listen, he signed up for this. I'm not sending her to prison for this act. And then there'll be other folks who might be, because again, this case is going to be also won and lost in jury selection, because you're going to need jurors who are not going to kink shame, who are not going to be like, oh my gosh, this is so horrible. Clearly she needs to go to prison just because she's a sex worker, just because she engaged in this behavior, right? So you have to really get into some of these preconceived notions that people hold, and they have, and that's just reality. And so I could see that split happening, and it being very difficult for either side to get a clear verdict. Not to say it won't happen in terms of guilty or not guilty, but I think the road is going to be long and bumpy.
Yeah, and we'll see how this all continues to play out. Melba Pearson, again, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate your time with us.
Thank you for having me.
No trial date has been put on the calendars yet. Michaela Rylaarsdam remains behind bars after a judge denied her bond. Her next court date is slated for September 27th. Thanks so much for joining us here on Law and Crime. I'm Elizabeth Millner.